Time to make the donuts. Today on the Manspace. Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, spacemen, to a donut making episode. Go grab your pie tins and
your Boston cream
and your Boston cream.
Go grab your Boston cream and your coffee and really just the Boston cream. So
apparently neither of us know how to do a donut episode. We're not doing an episode on donuts, just so everybody knows.
No, but now I want to tell you about how I used to spend my junior high years in Arizona when I was like in, I don't know, probably 8th and 9th grade. Jerem and I, when we would spend the night at his house, because Dunkin' Donuts was, I swear, open 24 hours a day. And he had a Dunkin'.
Seems like.
Yeah, he had a Dunkin' not far from his house on, I think it was on University Drive. So he and I would sneak out. We would walk over to Dunkin' and get a dozen Boston cream donuts.
Barf.
And then we would walk over to our friend's house and tap on her window, and she would come and sit out front, and the three of us would eat Boston cream. And at least once we built a fire from the box and whatever we could find in her yard. Just for giggles. This is like at 2 a.m.
A lot of people don't know that Melissa Etheridge's song "Come to My Window" was about teenage boys bringing her Boston cream donuts. Come to my
I was
window,
the inspiration for the Melissa Etheridge
Boston
song.
cream donuts by the light of the moon. I clearly don't know that song. All I could think was that when you said we go to her window, I'm like, oh, I'm sure her parents were super happy about that.
Her dad was a cop.
He's like, we gotta say donuts
for the Mesa PD.
Mesa PD, the
Yeah.
hardest cops in Mesa.
Jerem was a cop for the Mesa PD, I think.
He's a cop for somebody. Is it Mesa? I know
it was Mesa for a while because he was a resource officer for
Westwood.
At Westwood.
I just liked hearing that one time he like slept through a call or something.
Yeah. Yeah. He woke up and they were doing an all call because they couldn't find him and he had fallen asleep.
My bad, everybody.
I asked him, he's like, oh, I got in so much trouble for that.
That's funny, dude. I would totally fall asleep. I don't know how they do it. Like, I don't know how people do that job.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, to me, the funniest thing about all of it was that Jerem was a cop. Like, if you had asked me which of my friends I thought would be a cop when I was a teenager, Jerem would not have been anywhere near the top of that list.
But was he the turdiest one?
Well, how are you defining turdy?
I don't know. I always feel like the guys who could become cops were always the ones where it's like, I broke the most rules in high school.
Oh, well, and that's the thing. It's not like he was a real rule breaker, but like, I don't think it was ever my idea to sneak out of the house and go get Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't feel like I meet cops when you hear about their high school. It's like, I was a by the book kind of guy. I was always very on time to things and I followed the rules. It's like, I never meet those guys as cops. I don't know. I've got a few friends who were cops and they sounded like not turds, but now I'll have to ask them.
Yeah. No, that's like, you remember the church by their house?
Yeah.
That had like a tiered roof.
Mm-hmm.
We used to climb on top of that roof.
Yeah. Breaking the law.
Yeah. Anyway, Jerem, what a delightful
J-Rom. person. Well, I think your mic is better than ours. It's always louder. Sounds like it.
I could probably turn it down.
You just don't know how. You have to download the software.
I did. I downloaded the software. Here, do you want me to turn it down? It's pretty low already, though.
It may be fine. It's just you. Yours just seems better quality. Like they updated it and it's better. Well, on the last
that's probably
recording,
true.
You sounded louder. Maybe I should just go up.
My mic is only at 35%. And you guys keep yours at like
whatever 6/8 is.
Yeah, 6/8. 75%.
Oh, I was going to say that's easy math, Rob. Come on.
Yeah, 75%. So yeah, mine's probably a better mic, and I keep it further away from my mouth now than I ever have.
Sometimes I like to just hear sentences out of context.
Like that one.
Yeah, and I just want to put those on the wall. So everyone's like, what does that mean? I keep it further away from my mouth than I ever have. I don't know. I wasn't there for it. Mike.
What?
Well, space people, spacemen. Matt's not here. Again.
It's true.
He's recording a podcast right now with one of our friends who we almost had on the show, Carlos.
Did we?
Who is currently, we planned to have him on the show, and maybe we so will. He is currently the president of TAMFT, Texas Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, and they're recording.
Fancy.
Matt's a guest on that podcast. I don't know how fancy it is. I don't know if it has. Part of me is like, how many people listen to the TAMFT podcast? It's something about like, it's anytime a therapist does a podcast, it's always like off the couch, like thoughts from the couch. Anyway, today is our episode on thoughts from the couch. Just kidding. Today, Mike is going to intro our topic.
I am.
That was loud, probably.
It was. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that loud. What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
I came across an article today as I was doing my morning trying to wake up scroll.
Your morning ablutions?
Yeah. And it said, Skim's boss says prioritizing work-life balance is not a recipe for success. It's a red flag. And so right off the bat, I thought, well, that feels dodgy. And this is a Business Insider article. So, it's high quality stuff.
So it's good.
Although they are simply taking comments that apparently this woman made on a podcast she did. And are writing their article based off of that, as opposed to actually interviewing her, which feels like it would be the better thing to do. So full disclosure, there may be more than what's here.
They took a funny sentence out of context and like, let's make an article out of that.
Yeah, well, and that's funny. Like even the title, as I read it, like as I got in and read the article, I thought, oh well, that title's super misleading. Mm-hmm. Right, like. One of the very first quotes they have from her is she says it's a personal responsibility to find a balance between work and home. Work-life balance is your problem. It isn't your employer's responsibility. So I think that's the first quote they have. And I thought, well, yeah, okay. I agree with that statement. Mm-hmm. But it just kind of got me thinking, like the longer I thought about it, I thought, I don't know how much I actually do agree with that statement. And I thought of YNAB as why I'm not sure how much I agree with that statement.
Me too.
Although this article referenced what now?
That's a good point. YNAB, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this article referenced that, there are others like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are not big fans of the work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And so it just got me thinking, right, as I've worked with a number of men and women where they'll sit and describe everything that's going on, and I'll ask them like, well, when do you take time for you? And inevitably, they all laugh as though that's the dumbest question I could ever ask. Because what time?
Right.
Like between being a parent and, a wife or a husband and an employee, like I have no time for me. And so I'm curious your thoughts on like, What do you think about that whole phrase, like work-life balance phrasing? What, like, how do you like when you have clients who complain about that stuff? Is it a priority to you? How do you interact with that with clients?
Before I approach that, I want to educate everyone on what skims are. I had to look it up. I was like, what's skims? Is that like Spanx? Sure is.
Oh, is
This
it?
is, yeah, this is reviewed.com, touted as the new solution focused approach to shape enhancing undergarments created by Kim Kardashian
Oh,
and the woman that does Jen Gertie or whatever it was, whatever her name was. So
greed.
it's basically her name is Greed. Hello. It's essentially,
Grede. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
It's
Emma though.
essentially the same thing as Spanx. And this reviewed.com actually says Spanx is a little better. It's kind of
Oh,
funny. It's like the new solution. It feels like, do you mean you're going to do the same thing as Spanx, but put Kim Kardashian's name on it? Anyway,
sounds like it.
so if you're wondering, that's what Skims is. And also, if you're going to, it sounds like by Spanx. Spacemen, you're welcome. Get yourself a pair of Spanx. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Male Spanx.
Spanx.
We call them Male Spanx. So,
Manx.
dang it, there it is. It's a wombo. So here's it's kind of an interesting thought, because sometimes I can see the idea that work-life balance sometimes can sound, I think, like when people say I'm practicing self-care, which sometimes I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
That's not self-care. Taking the day off from work and sleeping in bed all day, that's not self-care. Like, and sometimes it can sound like laziness. However, I do think I was actually just saying this to somebody the other day. It wasn't a client, but just talking about, there's a few companies who've tried it here in the U.S. and found a lot of good results from it. And there's companies that you're in Europe that do it more often, like a 4-day work week, and found that employees are just as, I think, actually in some cases, if not more productive in a 4-day work week than they are in a 5-day work week. And or I think of like even the Sweden, that Sweden, Finland, the Scandinavian countries consistently rank like among the happiest in the world all the time. And they did an interview with I think we've talked about this before, but with school kids there, and said, what is it that's different about this? Like, because they have better test scores than we do. And the answer was, none of us ever have homework, because and the teachers all said, we believe that, like, when you're at school, you do school. When you're at home, you go play and be a kid. Like, we shouldn't be pushing you to be an employee or a student at home. And then I was listening to a client just the other day who mentioned, like, working. It was like, he doesn't get in until, because of stuff he has to do in the morning, doesn't get in until like 9:30 or 10, working till like 6:30 at the office, coming home, eating dinner, watching a show with his wife, and then getting back to work about 8:30 and working till midnight. And I thought, dude, is this like, when you look back at your life, will you think, I'm so glad I spent my life that way? I'm so glad that I gave so much time to that one company that I don't really probably care that much about. They just provided me an income. So it's like, and I just kept thinking, there's no way, like, that will just lead to burnout. But we do have this kind of mentality, I think, in the US. It's like, I was just thinking about employees, but then it branched out into, is this just a broader American ideal? Which is, if there's a resource, use it up, burn it out, man. Like, suck it dry, and then move on to the next one. And it's like, we do that with, whether it's this makes me sound like I'm some sort of environmental activist, but like, we do it with like coal or fossil fuels, or, it's like, we'll use it up till it's gone. We'll burn that bad boy, and then we'll just figure it out down the road. But think of all we can get done and accomplish, and how much money we can make in between. So this work-life balance thing, all I can read is like, you just, like, maybe it's I'm a boss lady, I don't know. But I think what's funny about it is, the thing I wondered when I read that little article was like, and what I wrote down was, it's one thing to say it's the employee's responsibility to find a work-life balance, because I can find some truth in that. Like, hey, I can't be the one who figures out your balance for you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be the one who says, because there's tons of people. I had a friend who worked for Dell, and at least in his division in Dell, I've talked to other people who said, no, it's not that way at Dell, but he said they had just passed paternity leave, 2 weeks of paternity leave. I was like, dude, that's cool. You're going to take it? He's like, no, I can't take it. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, they have to let you take it, right? He's like, no. He's like, yeah, they'll let me take it. Then they'll just find a way to fire me. He's like, it won't be direct. It will be like, well, you didn't do this, and so therefore we're going to have to put you on a plan, and then we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, oh. Now, I don't get it. It's a little bit like elementary schools canceling recesses. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why do you think that the best answer is just work harder and harder and harder?
Yeah.
What annoys me about this, because I get the idea of like, it is your responsibility. You have to figure out that work-life balance. And it's very difficult I shouldn't say it's very difficult, but it is difficult when you work for yourself, because it's like, man, if I struggle with this. Like if I go on vacation, it's like, well, I got to work twice as hard before I go on vacation.
Yeah.
So much so that sometimes it feel like it took 3/4 of my vacation to finally kind of settle down, and then my vacation is basically over. It's like, shoot, and then I've double booked on the other side, so it's like,
right.
oh, shoot. So I think where it gets tricky, it's one thing to say that it's your responsibility, but that would be cool if it's like, okay, then if it's my responsibility, don't fire me when I prioritize this kind of balance. Meaning, if I'm going to, and this is what's so funny to me, it's like, if I can get this stuff done in 6 hours, why do you make me be there for 8?
Yeah.
The thinking is, well, because you'll be even more productive in 8. It's like, no, I won't.
Right.
I'll just fart around for 2 hours. In fact, there's all that stuff that's like, you'll do 3 hours of work in an 8-hour workday.
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure you're here for 8 hours. It's like,
yeah.
What? So anyway, as far as like how it goes with clients, I mean, this is what interested me about this topic, was that it does seem like so many men in particular, and there are women that this is the case as well, but men in particular deeply identify with like what their job is, how much money they make, and how hard they work. We've talked before, I think, about in Japan, there was this, I read multiple articles about this problem they have. I guess we'll call it a problem. That's like, you're expected to be so devoted to work and to the company that you falling asleep in the middle of like a meeting is like a sign of like, that guy's committed.
Yeah.
Because he's not sleeping. So he falls asleep on a train because he's got to catch sleep wherever he can, because he's going to work, work, work. And I think that sounds freaking miserable. I just saw this Instagram reel that I'm like, I started following this guy, because I'm like somehow totally jealous. He worked at like, he said, I'm sure lots of people have seen this. It's like had like 11 million views, the first one I saw, but it was like, he worked a corporate job. He worked at Discount Tire. He's like, I'm not happy. I'm going to sell my stuff and buy a sailboat and sail around the world for the rest of my life. And so I'm watching him sail by himself with his cat from Oregon to Hawaii. And you can see at times he looks genuinely freaked out and like he wants to cry, like where he's like, I got to get up there and fix the jib. He'll kind of laugh like, and it'll be scary, like, and it looks like he's like, like, or his rudder breaks and he's like, but I have this deep jealousy. It's like, I just want to go like live life. So, or like on 30 Rock, Pete Hornberger is always like, sometimes you just want to get in a car and drive. Anyway, so I don't have it frustrates me that men identify this way, that like, this as an elementary school teacher, everyone assumed you had an easy, lazy job because you were out, quote unquote, at 3:30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And you had summers off. And so you got an easy gig, man. I got to work all the way till 5 and I don't have, and it's like, dude, you're an idiot. But But it's like because even if you had that balance, then people perceive you as lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if my balance is that I don't work more than 6 hours in a day and then I just go home and play video games, then it's like, then you're lazy.
You're
You could be
lazy.
doing more. It's like, I guess more what? More work? Why?
Well, and like that's the interesting thing about certain careers, and certainly there are more than the ones I'm about to name. But like I think being a doctor, right, being therapists, being a school teacher, like my school day went from 7:30 to about 3, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7:30 to about 3, quarter to 3. And I think I had a 30-minute lunch break, of which 10 minutes was used walking my kids to the cafeteria and then going back to pick them up and stuff. So now it's a 20-minute lunch break. And then I had a 45-minute specials, which is when they would write for those that, because I don't know that everyone calls it specials outside of Texas. It's when they would do music, art, or PE, right? They would kind of rotate days. So at that 45 minutes, but that 45 minutes generally had meetings in it. So from 7:30 to 2:45, I had maybe 40 minutes where I could get done whatever I needed to get done.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like, in the job that we have, no, if I say I'm working 6 hours, then that means for 6 hours, you can't contact me
Yeah.
because I have somebody in my office. I can't pause and pick up the phone. I can't close the door to get some extra work done. Like I am with somebody. And so all of the extra stuff, which admittedly, right, case notes, like none of that is super time consuming here, but all the extra stuff gets done when I don't have clients with me.
Right. That I'm not getting paid for.
Right. And so like, it's one of those where I think, for most people, they can close their door and don't bother me. I got to catch up on some work. Right. And like you said, there's been enough studies that suggest that the average person really only works about 4 hours a day out of like an 8-hour day.
Right.
But again, we have started to take this as kind of a badge of honor. Like
that's what I think is concerning to me.
Yeah. Well, and that was like at some point in here, she says, the mom of four said she finds time. This is the CEO, right, of Skims and whatever the other Good American is. The mom of four said she finds time to spend most of her weekends on the beach in Malibu. But working on Saturdays is to be expected of someone who wants to lead an extraordinary life.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, and somewhere else she talks about like, well, no, that you need to kind of be working every day. And so there's like, and certainly I had a principal and she and I always disagreed on homework. I never wanted to give it, and every year, like she was my favorite principal that I worked for in the 14 years I was teaching. But she and I never agreed on homework. She always wanted me to give it, and I never wanted to, except for reading. My kids had to read 20 minutes a night. That was the one homework I gave them. I didn't care what they read, as long as they read 20 minutes a night. But she and I would disagree about it all the time, but it was the same thing. I thought, no, they don't need to be doing that crap. They have other stuff they have to do. They have lives outside of school. But she, for the most part, like she was the kind where by the time I got to her as a principal, I had started to set my own boundaries for teaching, where once I left school for the day, I wouldn't check my email again. And so a couple of times, or like during the summer, I wouldn't check my email. Like I was contracted for 187 days a year, which means all those months during the summer, like I wasn't a contract employee. I wasn't under contract in those windows.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, I'm not going to work for you. You're
Right.
literally asking me to work for free at this point. And so I would not check my email during the summer. The only time I would check it is if my boss sent me a text that said, hey, I need your feedback on this. Please check your email. And she, I think in the 4 years I worked for her, texted me or called me 3 times during the summer. She was fine with it. She understood. Like, she was the kind where she was going to send an email at 9:00 at night. And I said, that's cool. If that's what you need to do, go ahead. But I'm not reading it till, 7:05 the next morning when I walk through my classroom door. Like, that's when I'll read it. She's like,
Right.
that's cool. Like, she was very respectful of the boundary that I set for myself in that. And that was, I think, part of the thing that was interesting to me is I think her statement that it's not their responsibility is true-ish. And somewhere else in this article, she says something about like, look, I'm not going to question you if I don't find you at your desk. She doesn't question why employees aren't at their desks throughout the day. She said there's flexibility built into the workday that allows workers to make it to their haircut or kids' parent-teacher conference, for example. And I thought, okay, sure. But I've worked for people where if you're not at your desk, no, they're going to question it.
Yeah.
And so I think, no, like, she can say that it's not their responsibility. And yet at the same time, her action suggests, well, yeah, but we also understand that life happens during the day. And so if you need to step away for an hour, as long as you're getting your stuff done, we don't care.
Right.
Go ahead and step away for an hour.
Right.
We trust that you're going to do what you have to do to get the job done. I think, okay, sure. Then I agree. It's on the employee to set their own boundaries and say, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. Again, like, to me, I think, right, but you actually are doing your part as an employer by taking that attitude.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to me about this, because I can actually see a place where if I heard the podcast, maybe I would say, oh, she wasn't saying we don't believe in that. Even when she says you should be working every day, maybe the whole thing was you should be working every day, even if it's just a couple hours.
Right.
Like maybe she's actually promoting don't work every day or don't work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, work every day from 6 to 2 or you'd be done at noon or, like, I don't know, maybe there's a whole bit different context. The thing that bothered me about it is indicative of two things. One, men who identify with working themselves to the bone, self-sacrificially, and almost sometimes in a martyrdom-like thing, but also not necessarily martyrdom, but often like, I mean, we do feel that responsibility. Like, this is how I show my wife and kids that I love them, is that I will work my guts out for them. And then they get mad at them for that. Like, why are you working so much? It's like, I do this for you. But also we are trying to prove ourselves. Like, you don't want to be seen as a lazy, shiftless turd.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like the idea that's like, we are measuring ourselves as men by how much we kill ourselves early. I also really have a struggle. I'm becoming more and more socialist, communist. I don't know. As I go, it's like,
Commie Pinko.
Money. I saw this thing. I can't remember the guy's name ever, but he is. We've talked about him on the podcast before. He's the guy who talks about that there are, boys are falling behind and men are way less likely to be swiped on than women in dating apps. It's like 1% of men, whatever that guy's name is. He's talked about how, here you have someone like Elon Musk who, has 2 women kind of suing him for stuff around their kid, custody type stuff or child support type stuff. Because I don't know if you've read anything about Elon Musk, who has this kind of, basically he's going to repopulate the world with geniuses that are going to be his kids.
It's I can't wait for one of his kids to be a complete moron.
Or a lot of them. Anyway. Yeah. And And then he says, here's this, Elon Musk, and he's done all these kind of deplorable things, but everyone's like, it's cool. He's like, why? Because he has a ton of money. He's like, we've become such a weird society about money. Now, it may not be that he's become. It may not be for some people that it's money. They love his ideas or his plans. It's like, sure, but just like, I look at this woman, and there is a status that's like you're a boss, like you're such a hard worker, you have all these side hustles, money's coming in all these places because you're such an amazing whatever influencer, whatever, fill in the blank. That's like, we have become very status driven and very financially, like, let me show you how much money I have driven. That's who we idolize at this point. That her statement says, if you want to be a boss like me, this is how you have to do it.
Yeah.
You sacrifice all these things. And I think, why can't we just say, hey, I'm okay with, I mean, I remember I once had a client who was very, very influential in his field. And he used to come in and say, I wish that I could just, he's like, I have a guy who comes and does work on my house. And he goes, I've talked to that guy. He said he's done every day by 5, goes home and has beers with his buddies and just hangs out. And he's like, I wish I was that guy, that I could just be cool with, like, it's okay, this is enough for me. And I don't mean enough like, therefore stop progressing as a human. Stop defining progression as a human as this one way. Yeah. Most of us will never be the owner or CEO of Skims.
Right.
Most of us will just be average people that no one's ever heard of. That, like, and when I say most, I mean like 99.99% of us will be somebody that no one's ever heard of, but we have 8
billion people in the world.
Right. And that's just right now.
Right.
So it's like that.
Right. Forget over the course of the history of the planet.
Right. So like we have so much that we could, like, just say, hey, look, this is good. I enjoy this part of my life, and I'm moving forward in these ways. I've become the best harp player that I know in a 3-block radius. Or even if it's not the best, it's just like saying, man, I love that I've really developed this in myself. I think don't stop developing, just stop defining your development as you're going to be a boss. Well, and how much money did you make?
I think some of that, goes back to something we've talked about before, which is the idea of comparison. Yeah. Right. That this, like I've started making pies. Am I a great pie maker? Pies than you. Okay.
I don't make any pies.
Am I a great pie maker? I don't know. I mean, the people who eat my pies, which so far are my family, so super biased, say they're very good. But I think, I don't know, I'm enjoying it.
Right.
I'm enjoying doing it. I enjoy seeing the pie when it's done. Like, I have pictures of all the pies I've made.
Right.
I don't share them with anybody, but that's not true. I usually send you and Matt pictures of my pies.
Yeah. I'm always jealous.
I'm good. I mean, no, but it's the realization of if I'm doing it right, the minute there's a comparison involved, I can't really say I'm doing it for me.
Yeah.
I'm doing it so that I'm better than somebody.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because pies are one thing, because you're not, I mean, you are putting good stuff out into the world. You're putting it into your belly. But like, I've thought about this recently. Like, I get caught sometimes with podcast stuff or with writing stuff that's like, that feels like, well, I don't know if I can do what they did or what this is. And I thought, look, in the end, I just need to be focused on, we've talked about last time, and we mentioned, I think, the manosphere, and we've mentioned a couple of things. It's like, look, I just want to put something good out. There's so much crap out. And like, I want to put something out that's like, hey, this is actually better. It sounds so arrogant. It is comparison again, but I'm the good one this time. But I want to, and it's not even, I guess in some ways it's not even better, but it's like, look, if this is what's out there, then we need something else coming out so that people can see there's a different way to look at this.
And that to me isn't necessarily comparison.
It's not, once I reframed it.
Right.
It was before.
But that's like, and that's, it is kind of a hard, like I've felt like I've both wanted to and needed to, for the sake of like growing my business, um, start blogging.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this, like, I love your blogs. I always have.
Oh, thank you. Me
I
too.
read them and I laugh hysterically.
Yay. Me too.
Um, but it also gets in my head when I have to sit down and write.
Oh yeah.
Even though I am, like, one, I'm a good writer.
Right.
Um,
And you have a different voice than I would.
it's that I have a very different voice. Mine does have humor in it, but it doesn't have humor in it like yours does.
Yeah, sometimes my message gets lost in the content of the humor. What, Rob? I don't know. Fart joke.
But as I've started trying to go back and write it, like, the first one is taking me, because I've had to sit and say, no, I need to refocus, so that I'm not trying to be you. I'm not trying to write a blog that's better than Rob's.
Right.
I'm trying to write a blog that is reflective of me and reflective of the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
And I think that's a big piece of this identity thing is, yeah, it like you said, we're not, like, the most of us are going to die, and people aren't going to know who we were.
Yeah.
Outside of our little circle of whatever.
And even that will just become a down the road, like, oh, I didn't know it was related to whoever that guy was.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think if we can say, no, but I'm doing things that are reflective of the man I want to be.
Yeah.
Then to me, there's my success.
That's the part that I think, like I said, that the article rubs me wrong, because it kind of describes it. And she may not have been trying to do this. It really may have been just how they wrote it, but it kind of describes it like, to become this kind of successful person that we all want to be.
Yeah.
You have to give some things up. And it's like, that's true. There is something to be said for, if you look at the people that we idolize in various respects, arts, technology, various, whatever it is, there tends to be often some degree of tortured genius. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, I'm not a tortured genius. I'm like a not tortured moron. And I guess in some ways I'm cool with that. Because they may have, like, it's kind of interesting. Like, they achieved this greatness, but would I want what they had to go through to get there? I don't know. Maybe I would. Maybe it would be so, because I can imagine that the torture may be just as intense as the, not necessarily the fame, like the payoff of like putting out the thing that I could feel, or whatever it is. And even that, I think, okay, cool. If that's your drive, cool. Like, if that's, I understand that for some people that work-life balance gets off. I shouldn't even say off. I don't think anyone gets to define what that balance would be for you. I don't want it to be driven for somebody by like this kind of, I don't know, greed of something, or trying to prove yourself that you have value by, look at what I've done.
Yeah.
Because the work-life balance really seems to vary by person. Like, I know people where I do think this is just my like observation. Sometimes it does feel like most people I know do tend to neglect their relationships in favor of work and or other hobbies, whether it's woodworking or video gaming or whatever it is. The relationships tend to take a back seat. And I've totally been guilty of that, of like work, or like my daughter all the time will be like, Dad, we're playing games. Stop looking at your phone. And I'm like, oh, someone's emailing me. Or I've been guilty of like my kids being like, hey, you guys go upstairs. We're just going to sit here and watch a TV show. Bye. So I can't say I'm any different. Like, my balance sometimes gets off. Because actually good work-life balance does not mean I have lots of time of leisure time necessarily. Sometimes a good work-life balance means, well, what she describes in this article, it's like, oh, yeah, my life is I go take care of my kids. I do this thing. I go to the doctor. I do, like, and sometimes I do get time for me, or recognizing that is time for me in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Time for me to take my kid to the doctor is time for me in a different way than me playing video games. And sometimes
Yeah.
I try to play video games. I don't really, but
no,
somebody
but
does.
lots of people do. And
Yeah.
that's, like it is to me, like I thought about this too. I thought, yeah, some of this is in fact going to depend on the phase of life you're at.
Mm-hmm.
When I was teaching and money was tight and I was working a second job, and for a few years Jenna was back in school, like, yeah, okay, I took on a lot more of home responsibilities, and I mean, not nearly enough, but more than I had. And then she finished and I went back to school, and like, no, of necessity, yeah, like there was a 3-year stretch where I did not have a lot of free time, um and I had to find it, and I had to figure out, like, I stopped trying to do anything on Wednesday nights because I was usually just falling asleep anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started taking Wednesday nights for me, but it was one of those
Mm-hmm.
where it's going to shift. What might work at one phase of life may not work in another. I
Right.
could never have taken the time for myself that I take now when I was earning my master's. I couldn't have. I would have failed or got fired or something. Like, I simply could not have done it. Now I can. My daughter and I are going to watch a movie tonight. She's been trying to find a window for like 3 days for us to watch this movie, and I think, okay, cool, like, let's do it. That wouldn't have happened,
Right.
6-7 years ago. I'd have been like, sorry, I have to do homework.
Right.
But that was the necessary phase where do you want to watch a 30-minute show instead? I can do that. I can give you 30 minutes. Now I can give her the 2.5 hours of whatever movie this is going to be.
Right.
And so it is recognizing, yeah, you're going to go through phases in life. And so it's not like, oh, I have to have X amount of time every day. No.
Right.
Like, you have to be open to it. But I do think, and this is something I tell clients pretty regularly, like, look, find yourself at least 30 minutes a day. And I tell them it doesn't have to necessarily be 30 consistent minutes. And like, one guy, he's like, I mean, he's like, I spend 30 minutes driving and waiting for my kid in the carpool line. And I think, okay, well, what are you doing during that 30 minutes? Like, do you have a favorite podcast or a favorite book? And he's like, oh, I totally do. And I thought, right. So he started using that as his 30 minutes. He's like, oh, it's a huge difference maker.
Yeah.
He's like, I get to the end of the day and I don't feel like I had no time for myself that day.
Right.
And so I think there is something too to be said for looking at where you're at and saying, well, how can I make this work for me?
That's what I think is the take home message in a lot of ways. What you're describing there is like, hey, you're going to have to, sometimes life does get out of balance, and you do have to kind of find the places where those, like, turn this time into this time, like driving to Houston. It's like, well, yeah, that's cool. I got 3 hours. I'm going to listen to a book for 3 hours. Like, but also just kind of reassessing, like, hey, if your work-life balance is off, it's possible that your priorities are off. Like, your focus is off. And so that may need to be redirected. So grab yourself a pair of Spanx and redirect those. And then come back next time and catch us on the Manspace. Tumble out of bed and I stumble to the kitchen. Pour myself a cup of ambition. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living.